Their goals are insane. Their goals are immaterial. They are cultists with an understanding, with a theological understanding that like the apocalypse must happen. And the only way to do that is if Israel maintains that land. Let's do Trump's cabinet picks. One by one.
In Washington for the incoming Trump administration, President-elect Trump has made a flurry of additional picks for top jobs, including Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. Some names you know, some names are new additions. Weijia Zhang joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, with more on all of it. Weijia, good morning.
Good morning to you, Tony. Good morning to everybody. President-elect Trump is prioritizing key administration roles that really reflect his top campaign promises, securing the border and boosting the economy with energy independence. And all of the appointees have at least one thing in common: fierce loyalty to Trump. Just 1 week after his resounding victory, President-elect Donald Trump is filling out his top posts.
This is a nice crowd.
Yes, they love you.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is Trump's pick to become Homeland Security Secretary. Once considered a vice presidential contender, Noem faced controversy over accounts in her memoir, but remained a strong Trump ally on the campaign trail.
Those criminals, murderers, rapists that are threatening safety in our communities, they're going to be the first ones on the list to go.
Trump is also expected to name Florida Senator Marco Rubio as his choice for Secretary of State.
We want an America that dreams big again, and for that, we need to elect Donald Trump. That's the stake in this election.
It's a long way from their rivalry for the Republican nomination in 2016.
Little Marco Rubio, he's a total disaster.
Rubio isn't the only member of Congress who could join the new Trump administration.
I have never in my lifetime seen the world falling apart like it is under Joe Biden.
Florida Congressman Michael Waltz is Trump's choice for National Security Advisor.
I fully believe in his America First agenda.
Waltz.
Law that Trump's numbing any number of Jewish conservatives who'd be equally qualified for the Israel ambassador job. I'm sure all the people like Greg Gutfeld who concerned trolled about Harris not picking Shapiro over anti-Semitism would be very upset about this. No, but that's also partially because Israel is not going to be upset about this. So, of course, that's not, if Israel is not upset about this choice, then that's going to read as not anti-Semitic, right? That's the main point here, because Mike Huckabee is perhaps the absolute worst person for this position because he is a absolute psychopath. Okay? In general, but certainly an absolute psychopath when it comes to Israel. He is one of the loudest voices that I have been chirping about endlessly in terms of conservative Christian far-right ultra-Zionism. Okay? In the United States of America, are there Jewish Zionists? Of course, okay? You got, Miriam Adelson, for example, or Sheldon Adelson. And they are massive donors to the Republican Party, okay? And then there are liberal Zionists who are also Jewish, like Haim Saban, who are massive donors to the Democratic Party. But they all pale in comparison. Sheldon's dead, exactly. But Miriam is carrying the torch. But they all pale in comparison to the rabid nature of an evangelical Protestant Christian who is an ultra-Zionist. Because their goals are not specifically tied to Jewish people or a false understanding that like Jews will only be safe in Israel, yada, yada, yada. Their goals are insane. Their goals are immaterial. They are cultists with an understanding, with a theological understanding that like the apocalypse must happen. And the only way to do that is if Israel maintains that land that is exclusively comprised of Jews, okay? It is the most insane, like you can't reason with a person like that. You know what I mean? I mean, you might not be able to reason with an ultra-Zionist Jewish person either, but at the end of the day, it comes from a different kind of social conditioning. And worst of all, and I've said this many, many times over, there are more ultra-Zionist, white nationalist Christians in the evangelical base in the United States of America that have this theological understanding this theological justification demanding that the rapture occurs in raw numbers, then there are Jews, Zionist and anti-Zionist alike. Okay? There are almost 10x the number of rabid evangelical Christians who believe in the apocalyptic reasons for why Israel must exist as a Jewish nation state than there are Jews across the board. You feel me? You smell me? You understand? And it's so funny because people just like completely forget that for one reason or another. I think on the liberal Democratic Party side, they conveniently ignore that because they want to run a defensive position for Israel by maintaining the position that like Israel is they do the pro-Israel anti-Semitism, the woke dual loyalty narratives. Okay? Where they'll be like, no, you don't understand. Like all Jews are Zionists and it's anti-Semitic if you criticize Israel, right? But that is a major reason for why there's so much motion on this, okay?
The decorated Green Beret veteran talked to CBS News about how he views U.S. priorities less than 1 week ago.
Let's end this war in Ukraine. Let's pivot to deal with China. Let's secure our border. Let's rebuild our military.
Stephen Miller will play a big role.
Yeah, anybody that says the West Bank is called Judea and Samaria is like an insta red flag. When Bill Clinton did it, it was unacceptable. And when Mike Fuckabee does it, you're like, oh.
Two.
America is for Americans and Americans only.
As Trump's pick for Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Miller helped mastermind the so-called Muslim ban and the zero-tolerance policy that separated families at the border during the first Trump presidency. Trump has also announced Lee Zeldin as head of the Environmental Protection Agency. The former New York congressman has been criticized by environmental groups for his voting record, and Zeldin has already promised to roll back Biden regulations.
Through the EPA, we have the ability to pursue energy dominance, to be able to make the United States the artificial intelligence capital of the world.
When someone says we got to do AI, just know that they want to they want to create new ecological disasters that you had not even comprehended before, okay? Every time you see one of those ugly AI art, all that AI art that you see that's ugly as they're basically boiling the coral reefs to be able to get that, okay? Oof. Yeah. Yes, we started a new denaturalization project under Trump in 2025, expected to be turbocharged. Justice Department establishes an office to denaturalize immigrants. That's what Stephen Miller said in 2023. Do you think the heavy use of AI over the last few years had a hand in the hurricane season insanity? I mean, certainly. Even oil companies are saying Trump is too extreme on climate change. This happened literally under the Trump administration as well. Oil giant ExxonMobil opposed President-elect Donald Trump's plans to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, a company spokesperson told to a CNN statement. A second U.S. exit from the Paris Climate Agreement will have profound implications for the United States' efforts to reduce its own emissions and for international efforts to combat climate change, an ExxonMobil spokesperson told in a statement. We advocate for policy that accounts for security, affordability, reliability, and environmental stewardship, not drastic changes that could hinder the progress being made today. I mean, it's performative for the most part. They much prefer the Joe Biden method, which was, aesthetically do the right things while still, increasing our over-reliance on fossil fuels. And, it's great. Good stuff. Great stuff. Overall, wonderful.
To bring back American jobs to the auto industry and so much more.
Trump is heading to the White House tomorrow to meet with President Biden. It is a post-election tradition that did not happen back in 2020 because Trump did not invite Biden over when their roles were reversed. Tony?
We should thank you very much, Washington correspondent Major Garrett. Major, good morning to you. These picks matter because of the ideas people will bring to the White House, also because they're going to be overseeing huge budgets of American taxpayer dollars. But the order of these announcements tell us something, too, about Donald Trump. What does it say to you?
2 words, speed and sequence. Things are moving very rapidly. I would expect more announcements today, possibly Treasury Secretary, possibly Energy Secretary. So there's tremendous speed. There are PowerPoints presented to President-elect Trump. He's like, I don't need PowerPoints. I know what I want to do. Let's just move, move, move. Why do I say the word sequence? Because it's important as we are, as a nation, digesting these moves that, for example, Tom Homan was named the border czar before
Yeah, I mean, he was, Obama's border guy too, for the record. Expect liberals to get really mad about Tom Homan when, and you should get mad, but just remind yourselves maybe quietly that he worked under Obama as well.
There was an announcement about DHS Secretary or even Stephen Miller going in the White House as Deputy Chief of Staff of Policy. Why? Because Tom Homan, everyone knows in the Trump inner circle, will have direct access to the president, and that sequencing, naming him first, makes him more important on border matters than the DHS Secretary to be, Christine Ohm, or even Stephen Miller. Same thing I would say in the sequencing of announcing Elise Stefanik as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations before naming Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. That's a very odd sequencing. Usually you do it the other way around. UN ambassador, much less important than the Secretary of State. Not for Trump. He wants Elise Stefanik, a staunch defender of Israel in the UN, to not only talk about America First diplomacy, but also have Israel's back. Not just Israel generally, but the Netanyahu government. So speed and sequence really matter.
I never paid attention to sequencing.
Thoughts on Stephen Miller? He is a very prominent neo-Nazi whose entire family despises him. He has no family. He has no friends. He has nothing in his life. The only thing he has is this resilient white supremacist, white nativist attitude and an agenda that he wants to follow through on that purges this nation of anyone that is like not white enough.
Sequencing before.
He has a
now
wife?
I will. Major, what does it tell you, the people that he's chosen so far, what does it tell you about the cabinet he wants to build and the administration he intends to run?
Does he still have a wife?
So I covered the Trump transition in 2016 going into 2017. And back then, there were two great questions. What do I do, and how should I best do it? Trump didn't have answers to that.
He's had a wife since 2020 and 3 children now.
He's never been president before. He knows the answers now. What he wants is loyalty, and he wants direct reporting. He knows the cabinet secretaries have to go through a Senate confirmation process. What he wants, though, is czars or people who have direct report power to him, who he can basically create a straight line of accountability that doesn't run necessarily through that agency's bureaucracy. It goes straight to him. You're going to see that shape many of his appointments. Obviously, there will be cabinet secretaries, but there'll be others who have direct report power to him, and he will try to use that to go around the bureaucracy when and where he can.
All right, Major, we've seen Trump talk about bypassing Senate confirmations with recess appointments. Between that and naming the czars in positions, what does he accomplish with that?
So it's worth pointing out, and I know this is ancient history, but during the Obama administration, congressional Republicans accused then-President Obama, who wanted to use recess powers to fill held positions, of using brazen, unconstitutional powers to do that. Now they're basically saying Trump should do that right away. So there's a disconnect there. Using recess appointments is something that the Supreme Court has basically restrained in a clash during the Obama administration. So there's Supreme Court precedent that will limit President Trump's powers to use recess appointment. But what he's trying to signal...
Oh, they'll definitely do that. This Supreme Court will definitely follow suit and act accordingly and maintain their... Yeah, this Supreme Court will certainly maintain their original position. Yeah, famously, they always do that.
To the Senate Republicans and to the nation broadly is he's going to move as rapidly as he can. And if he's challenged in court, he may be set back, but he's going to move as aggressively as he can. And he wants Senate Republicans to get on board and help him as much as they're willing to.
All right, Major, he's moving very quickly. Thank you so much.
All right, Donald Trump's second administration is starting to take shape, and it is full of names you might recognize. Lee Zeldin, he's going to be running the EPA. Elise Stefanik will be the U.S. ambassador to the UN. Our friend and frequent guest, Stephen Miller, will be the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. And just breaking earlier tonight, there are multiple reports out tonight that Florida Senator Marco Rubio will be named Secretary of State. Now, Donald Trump is also naming former acting ICE Director Tom Homan as the new border czar. He will be in charge.
Oh, yeah. I mean, any Democrats in Trump's cabinet? Yeah. RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, maybe. No, of course not, dude. Are you crazy? Are they reclaiming the word czar? Guys, that word never went away, okay? I tried to explain to you guys when liberals were like, well, Kamala Harris is not a border czar. That's not an official position. It's like, no, that it is an unofficial way to describe that you are tasked with working on that position. Like, it's a very normal thing. Every administration has done this, okay? A border czar just means it's an unofficial designation for a person that's working on that. You do health czar, right? Yeah, it just means like border boss, the boss of the border, boss baby. How much government do you think we're gonna have after this administration? I don't know. Anyway, by the way, Elise Stefanik literally doesn't have a JD, doesn't even have a Bachelor of Science, just a careerist moron who straight out of college joined the Bush admin and never left politics since. She has no policy chops and has no diplomacy experience. You literally couldn't find someone less qualified if you tried. She literally is just a dumbass. Yeah. Yeah, her qualifications are that she bullied university presidents for not being sufficiently pro-Israel, and she popped off big time, and that's it. It's going to get worse. It's going to get really, really, really bad.
And after
here's some more dumb. Border Patrol morale soars after Trump's victory, higher than the first time he won.
was announced as borders. We heard all these sound bites of him turned out to be false.
Frustrated because no matter how good they do, the migrant flow doesn't stop. And you know, the border security mission is being completely neglected because there seems to be no light. And
yeah, totally neglected. Trita Parsi went on CNN to talk about Trump's war hawk cabinet.
Trita Parsi, an expert on US-Iranian relations, author of Losing an Enemy. It's good to have you both.
Will you ship to Canada if that law passes? What do you mean? Canada and England literally are already ahead of the United States of America in terms of like aggressively pursuing anyone and everyone that says anything about Israel. Yeah, Canada's really going to be a safe haven for me.
Let me start with you. What should we take out?
Canada literally adopted the IHRA definition already.
Of the meeting in Riyadh yesterday.
I think it's a very strong indication of where some of the Arab states in the Persian Gulf are leaning towards. The analysis among some of the hawks in the Trump circle is that they can go back to the situation in 2016 and 2017, where they laid the groundwork for some form of an Arab-Israeli alliance against Iran, which the Arabs at the time were quite in favor of. Things have changed, however. At this point, it's very clear both the Saudis and the Emiratis want to make sure that they absolutely stay out of any war that involves the United States, Israel, and Iran. And part of the reason for this, of course, is the anger amongst their own.
This is what I mentioned. Mohammed bin Salman yesterday, despite his own personal disagreements, openly recognized what Israel's doing is genocide. Okay, just so you understand. So it's a unique predicament. And I think Americans are operating on the OG, like on the old school assessment of the situation. And yes, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, would be very knowledgeable on genocides, you know. Anyway, so yeah, here it is at the Arab Summit. The kingdom reiterates its categorical rejection of the genocide committed by Israel against the brotherly Palestinian people, which has left more than 150,000 martyrs and injured, most of whom are women and children. Now, the other side of the story, regardless of Mohammed bin Salman's own personal convictions that it would be so much better if all Palestinians ceased to exist, which he has openly recognized time and time again, because he just wants Neom, he just wants like Saudi to be in the sphere of influence of the Western world. He wants tourism. He wants to diversify the Saudi portfolio. These are things that he is trying to do. For him, it's like, yeah, the Palestinians present an issue because his own people, understandably, have a very different mindset on the emancipatory struggle of the Palestinians. Now, having said that, he still has to obviously optically be against Israel, regardless of what his own personal ambitions or his own personal convictions might look like. Now, having said that, Okay. The other side of the story is not just about Saudi Arabia. It's not what MBS is saying. Mohammed bin Salman is saying. The other side is China. China does not want instability. China does not want Iran and Saudi to be at each other's throats. So for China, he wants energy to keep flowing. And for that reason, because they need oil for their projects and their developmentary projects, okay? China has already instituted a peace negotiation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. This happened before October 7. China brokered a ceasefire between Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Biden was the one opposing it and wanting to continue the blockade of Yemen. Having said that, okay, the major pressure point for Saudi Arabia in coming to the table for this wasn't just because China wanted it. It was because Saudi Arabia does not want their oil refineries to be lit on fire. That's it, okay? That's it. They saw during the Formula One thing in their, sports washing initiatives, they saw in the backdrop their oil refineries on fire. That is never going to be good. That's not a good look. That doesn't say this is a safe country that you can come to, white tourists. And that certainly is not good for their economic interests, regardless. That picture is the real reason why they came to the table. That picture is the real reason why they haven't been so over the top with their support of Israel's defense, even though they have supported Israel's defense, specifically over the Red Sea.
Populations with what Israel has been doing in Gaza and the West Bank and increasingly in Lebanon, but also because of realization that Iran's ballistic missiles are so effective that they penetrated Israel's many layers of air defenses, and as a result will also be able to penetrate whatever the United States has provided these countries. So they're much more vulnerable vis-a-vis Iran as well than what they thought they were back in 2016. All of this is adding to their desire to stay out of any type of a conflict and help de-escalate the situation.
We are such a stain on humanity, I swear to God.